2009, the UN Refugee Agency recognized DeKalb as being one of the largest resettlement communities in the United States, as you said, and in the district's efforts to serve those students. So how does that history of having such a large resettlement community shape your larger learning community in DeKalb?
Yeah, so I definitely think having a large refugee and immigrant community changes the way that we have to do teaching and learning. Currently, we have over 174 languages and dialects and 160 and students from 167 different countries. Most of the time, I had at least over 35 languages. So, even if you think of it from a language and a literacy perspective, that the word order and all of that is different in all of these languages.
Right.
So it's not like teaching in a monolingual classroom where all of your students speak Spanish and you can rely on certain phrases that are similar in Spanish as they are to English, or phonemes and all of that. You can't rely on any of that as much when you're teaching in a very multi-linguistic, multicultural classroom. So you have to be really strategic about learning more about your students, their educational background, their culture, and their interests, because in order to engage them in the learning process, it takes a lot more than just, when you would have one or, only a few different cultures in your classroom.
Yeah. So when you are working with students with such an incredible range and diverse backgrounds and experiences, how do you try to build that sense of connection or shared experience?
Yeah. So I think, luckily I thank my experience at the refugee agency, because I think a lot of that was stuff that I learned from that work. Because when I was working in that role, not only did I teach in the after school programs, but I also helped with resettlement. I would pick people up from the airport. I would set up apartments. I would do home visits. I would do everything from teaching how to use the thermostat to helping you apply for citizenship. It was just everything and anything in between. And a lot of these families became, friends, and some of them even considered me part of their family. I was at their Eid, I was at weddings, all sorts of things. So I think being a part of that community really gave me something that I feel like I wouldn't have had if I didn't have this experience coming into it. Understanding kind of like how to listen and learn. It's not just knowing the culture, because obviously they all have different lived experiences, but understanding kind of like how to just kind of be a participant in a situation and just learn from those around you. I think that's also an important part. As far as teaching, I think, you need to be strategic about what kind of books you have your students read. I really like a book called Green Card Youth Voices, and they are personal narratives, and they have them for different cities. There's one for Atlanta, and it's in They are students from Clarkson, Cross Keys, and the International Student Center, which are all DeKalb schools. And they're short narratives that the students wrote about their American dream, their hopes, their futures, where they came from. And they also have recordings of it. So reading stuff like that and then having my students engage in that and tell their own stories. So building a sense of community is kind of honoring your students, their cultures, their backgrounds, and allowing them to make connections with each other. Because they would say, oh yeah, that, I understand that. I have that same experience. Even if it's not the same, a similar experience that you do. Right. Because of this, so having your students and that requires, like I said, building relationships with your students, creating a safe place for your students to feel vulnerable enough to share these things about themselves.
Wow. And we'll definitely note the book you mentioned in the show notes. So you said it was called Green Card Youth Centers?
Green Card Youth Voices.
Oh, Youth Voices. Mm-hmm. I love that. And so having them read about other people's American dreams and their experiences, and then having them write their own, even if it doesn't ultimately become a published book, but to share that with the classroom. And you said something that's so important is being a good listener and understanding, really as you're talking, it's more about the whole child and the whole family, really, not just the subjects, 9 to 3 in the school day. And so that background experience that you could bring to your students is so powerful. I think teachers out there that are listening, when you think about, you might have 160 different countries that these students come from, and 80 or 90 different languages, but what are those common experiences, even if they're not exactly the same, but coming to a new country and all of that. So I think that aspect is so important. And definitely we'll have our listeners check out that Green Card Youth Voices. That sounds like an amazing resource.